Let's go ahead and start. So my name is Garrett Curtis. I am your Infowise trainer today. I've been working with Infowise for a little bit now, doing training and just general consulting, helping people use the Infowise Ultimate Forms tool to enhance their SharePoint sites. Today, we're going to be talking about project tracking in SharePoint using Infowise Ultimate Forms. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a couple ground rules, if you will. Number one, I am joined today by Vladi and Will. Both of them will be answering questions for you as we go. So please enter any questions you might have in the question interface. Uh, if we have time, I'll be answering questions with a sort of visual walkthrough as well toward the end. So please ask away. Next up, there will be a couple quick survey questions for you at the end of the webinar, just so we can sort of tune our webinars to what you're looking for. Please stick around and answer those at the very end. And then finally, today's recording will be posted on YouTube after our presentation. Additionally, it will be on our website in the webinars section. So if you like what you see today and you'd like to share it, please go look for it there shortly after the webinar is over. Okay, well, with that out of the way, I suppose we can get started. So first off, I'd like to talk about what is Infowise Ultimate Forms. We're here, of course, to talk about SharePoint and Infowise together. SharePoint, as I'm sure you're aware, is a great collaboration tool that Microsoft puts out. It comes free with the Office 365 business licenses, as well as, of course, you can download it for on-premise with the free Microsoft Foundations version. Infowise extends SharePoint and adds features in 3 different areas, which I have, of course, icons for. So number one is the Forms area. So Infowise takes SharePoint and extends the normal SharePoint list form, and you can do all sorts of dynamic, really cool stuff with it. And this, of course, is without using InfoPath or any other sort of third-party downloadable tool. So it's all done straight in the browser. Next, I have all those gears in there. That is for process. Infowise has a lot of process automation features built in. This is probably my favorite part of the project or the product. You can really take a normal SharePoint list and extend it to do all sorts of really cool stuff like, for example, we'll see today for a project tracking system, you can create tasks for people automatically, which is really nice. And then finally, I have that chart there because Infowise is all about charting and reporting. We'll see a lot of that today because we're going to be talking about project tracking, which of course goes hand in hand with good charting and calendars and reporting. So those are sort of the 3 core areas of Infowise. We'll sort of dip into all 3 of them today so you can get a sense for what it's about. Now let's talk about sort of where Infowise shines. So I've got 4 icons on this slide, no words, but I'll walk you through them. The first icon here is those puzzle pieces, and that's because Infowise really integrates well into SharePoint. So whereas some other solutions require you to sort of download a standalone desktop application, Infowise is entirely in the browser. Everything that you do is going to be straight in SharePoint. There's no extra software that you need. That's really nice when it comes to sharing your creations with other people. Next up is that cloud. We are cloud ready. Our product works both on the Office 365 SharePoint Online version as well as the on-premises versions. So no matter where you're running SharePoint, you can run Infowise Ultimate Forms as well. Next up is the $ because we are very cost efficient. We've just changed our pricing, and actually if you have a small team and you are on the cloud, you can use Infowise for free, but teams of any size can use a 30-day free trial as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about that free trial at the end of the webinar as well. And then finally, no code. Infowise has absolutely no coding required. Everything is done using a nice configuration user interface. It's really easy. You don't need to have any sort of coding background to get the benefits of Infowise. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's talk about what we're going to see today. Like I said, today is going to be about project tracking with SharePoint and Infowise solutions. So I've sort of broken down project tracking into 3 key areas that I'm going to focus on today. Number one is key performance indicators, or KPIs. These are things that people use to sort of at a glance see where your project is in the process. Maybe you want to see if it's behind schedule, or maybe you want to see what status is at. By default, SharePoint really only gives you text and numbers, and it's kind of hard to parse. So we'll see some of the nice Infowise features related around KPIs to sort of make the information pop. Next up is charting and calendars. Like I said before, charting is pretty key into taking all of this data you have in your project tracking system and presenting it in a way that people can quickly get key information out of it. So we'll talk about charting as well. And then finally, automation. As I said, that's my favorite part of this whole Infowise product. We're going to take sort of static SharePoint lists and turn them into an automatic system that forces your users to follow business processes rather than just hoping they're going to follow those processes. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right in. So I have for us a Office 365 site. We've got a project list here with a bunch of projects in there. They're all fruit themed today. Additionally, I have a task list with a bunch of tasks in it. And so you can imagine that the schema here basically is you've got your projects. Let's say we've got Peach project, and then we're going to have a few tasks like start the project, do milestone 1, finish the project. Those we'll find in the task list. And of course, I can sort by project here, and I can see for my Peach project, what tasks do we have and where they are in process. So all the key parts to a project tracking system are here. We've got projects, we've got tasks, but it's kind of annoying to use. I can't go from my projects list, I can't directly see what tasks are in there. In the tasks list, I can see all of the tasks, but they're all kind of mixed together, and it's a little bit difficult to parse what I'm looking at and who's responsible for what. So we're going to add some Infowise Ultimate Forms here and make this a little bit easier to use. So first off, let's talk about KPIs. Again, these are sort of visual indicators about how our project is doing. We can already see I've got one KPI added here, and this is what we call a color choice or icon choice field. This is a custom Infowise field where you take a normal drop-down choice field. So for example, we have the status field here, and I can add icons to delineate what each of these statuses is. This is a little thing, but it is kind of nice to add a visual flair for your users. But next up, let's look at something a little bit more KPI-y. In this case, we've got days remaining, and this is a calculated column in SharePoint. It's looking at the due date for our projects, and it's reporting on how far that is away from today. So for example, this due date's in the past, and I have negative days remaining, which means I am late on my project. Some of these are complete projects, in which case I am reporting 99 days because really I don't want to track those anymore because they're complete. For all of my other projects that are still in work or pending or on hold, I do have a days remaining count, and those are all positive numbers because these due dates are in the future. So I could look at this right now and sort of look through and parse, okay, negative ones I need to worry about, 99s I don't care about, real numbers, that's how many days I have left. But wouldn't it be nice if there's a visual way to do that? So I'm going to show you how to set that up with Infowise Ultimate Forms. First off, I'm going to go into my list settings and then hop over here to the design screen. And this is the dashboard for Infowise. These are all of the features that Infowise brings to the table. We're not going to talk about all of them today. There's a lot here. We're going to scroll down here to the columns section. These are all unique columns that Infowise provides that extend the normal SharePoint columns. In this case, we're going to talk about the indicator column. As you can see, it says ads, KPIs, progress bars, and countdowns. This is where you'll be adding your visual KPIs to the system. I've already actually got one set up here called Watch, but let's create a new one, and we'll call it Project Days Status. And what we want to do is we want to key off of this calculated column for days remaining and present a visual indicator about where we are in the project. So what I want is I'd like it to be red if we're below 0 days, because that means we're late. And then I'm going to put a 7 in here because if it's between 7 and 0 days, that means it's due in the next week sometime, and we probably want to be watching that a little bit closer. So that'll be a red stoplight. And if it's above 7, that means we're at least a week out on the project. It can be green because we don't really need to worry about that too much. So simple as that. I've got that. I hit save. What it's doing now is it's creating that new column for me in the background. As soon as it finishes, there we go, hop back over to my dashboard and refresh it. And I should see that progress bar right there. It looks like I've made a little mistake. I need to set that to work off of my days remaining field. I forgot that step. There we go. Okay, so I'll save that again. It will refresh, and then I'll just refresh my dashboard, and there we go. I've got my stoplights. So now at a glance, I can see, all right, I've got 3 projects I really need to worry about, 2 projects that are sort of on the radar, and then a bunch of projects that are doing great. I don't have to worry about those at all. So that's an excellent example of how to use a KPI to show your users this numerical data in a more visual sense and lets them immediately zone in on what they need to care about. Okay, other types of KPIs we have. Additionally, we can do a progress bar. So in my tasks list, I've got this % complete thing here where I'm basically having the users tell me how far along we are in that project. And again, it's, okay, we've got numbers. You can sort of parse through and see what's done and what's on its way. But wouldn't it be nice if we had a visual way to represent that information? So back in my Infowise design screen, I'm going to take a look at the tasks list. And again, I'll head back down to my indicator field. And now I've already got this one set up for us. So let's just take a look at how it looks. Basically, what I'm doing is setting up a progress bar on the % complete column. My start value is 0 and my goal value is 1 for 100%. That's basically setting the bounds of the bar I've got. And then I can optionally color the bar. So if it's above 80%, it's going to be green. If it's between 20 and 80, it's going to be orange. And if it's less than 20, it's going to be red. And that just sort of gives us one more visual cue. So let's take a look at that. I'll have to add that column to my list view. I'll just do that by hitting Modify View. And my column was called Progress. So I'm going to add the Progress column and remove the % complete column. There we go. And now I've got a very nice progress bar for each of my tasks. And I can see immediately which ones aren't started, which ones are only a little bit, and which ones are done. Additionally, if I hover over one of these, it's going to give me the exact percentage that task is at. So that's a really cool feature here, especially when you're working with tasks which have that % complete already. It's really easy to extend that into a nice KPI. Okay, so I've built a little dashboard which includes all of these KPIs at home. Let's take a look at what that looks like. There we go. Okay, so let's start here at the bottom. I've got a couple of views set up. This is my 30-day outlook for projects, basically projects due in the next 30 days. I've got my KPI for how long we have left in the project. I see these first 3 are already behind schedule, and I've got a couple that I need to worry about. I can see what status they're in. Additionally, I've got all of my late tasks here. So these are ones where the due date is today or earlier. And I can see how far along we are on those late tasks and who I have to bug because you're already late on your task. So that's a pretty nice dashboard. We've got a few KPIs in there. It's easy for managers to pick out what information that they need to see. Now at the top of this, I've also got some charts set up. As I said, charting is a really great addition to your project management and SharePoint solutions because it lets you sort through all of this data that we've got in these fields and put it onto a chart. But before I get into charting, I want to ask if there's any questions about the KPIs that we talked about. So please feel free to enter any questions you might have in the question interface. And I'll be happy to answer those. Looks like we have a question about how do I set up these icons here for that status column. Good question. Let's head back over to my Infowise dashboard. Under projects, I'm going to be setting up, this isn't actually a KPI column, it's actually a color choice column. So here we've got a color choice column set up for status, and I'm picking, in this case, icons instead of colors. But you can see I've got a bunch of icons I can pick. I can also add my own icons from the internet, and that just lets me sort of set up my icons visually for my statuses. Additionally, I can actually do things like hide that label. So rather than seeing the text, all I'm going to see is the icon. If I refresh the page, I should see that immediately. Yeah, so there we go. Now all I have is the icon. So you can see you can sort of make it very visual. Okay, if there's no questions, then we'll move on to charting. Like I said, charting is great because it takes all of that information that you've captured in SharePoint and puts it into a visual chart that you can sort of consume very easily. So for an example, I've got the count of open tasks by team member. So this is looking at that tasks list, which is that huge list of tasks that are for each project. And I can see I've got 3 people that the tasks are assigned to, and I want to see how much work each person is going to do, how much work each person has assigned, basically. And I can see that Robert doesn't have very much assigned, but I've got a ton of stuff that I have to do. So maybe as a manager, I can look at this chart and say, okay, Garrett, maybe move some of your tasks over to Robert and sort of balance that out. So that's a great chart. Another chart we have here is projects by status. So this is looking at my projects list and summing up all of those statuses. So I can see most of my projects are in work right now. I've got some pending, some on hold, some complete. So that's another example of a good chart you can do. And now let's do a little scenario. Let's say we have a new requirement passed down where we want to see the number of late projects we have by project manager. So each project of mine, if we go into the project, has a project manager and a stakeholder. And let's say that our manager is looking to determine how many projects that each person has that are late. So of course I could do that by going into the projects list. I can filter by days remaining negative, and I could have to add the project manager to the view. So there's a lot of steps there. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a chart that did that? So to set that up, what I'm going to do is go back into the Infowise dashboard here, and I'm going to go down to the charts section. Here's where we configure all of those charts. We can see I've already got one chart set up, which is projects by status. Right now, I am going to set up a chart for the late projects. So late projects by manager. In this case, I've got a view set up for only late projects. So it's basically a filtered view that shows me only the projects that are currently late. I'm going to sort this chart by project manager, and then I'm going to add a series for the count of IDs, which is basically the number of projects by project manager. Additionally, I'm going to set this to be a pie chart. I'm going to show a legend, which is going to give me the names. I'm going to show the values, which is the number of late charts. I'll throw the legend at the bottom. There we go. That's all I have to do. There's a bunch of other settings here, mostly with colors and stuff. You can really dial these charts in to follow your business's theming and that sort of thing, but we're not going to worry about that for now. All right, so we'll add that chart. And now what I have to do is go back to my nice dashboard and associate that new chart to my web part. So to do that, I will edit my page. All right, great. And then in the page, I've actually already got the web part set up. You can see here, but if I didn't, what I would do next is basically pick where I want my web part to go, add a web part, and then I've got 3 web parts to pick from. These web parts are installed along with the Infowise Ultimate Forms. In this case, I'd be adding a smart chart to my page, but I've already got that set up there, so I don't have to worry about that right now. Here is my new web part, and if I go to edit the web part settings, if you've ever worked with web parts before, this is basically, I can set the size, I can set the title. At the very bottom here for these Infowise web parts, I'm going to paste in that name of the chart that I set up. So I set up late projects by manager. I'll paste the name there, and that tells it which chart it wants I want it to go look at. And there we go. So I'll go ahead and save that page. So just like that, I've set up a chart that's going to be counting the number of late projects by manager. I can see I've got one late project, and Will's got 2 late projects. Okay, and this is a great dashboard now. As a manager, I can go in here, I can see which resources are overworked, I can see which employees I have to go hound because their projects are late, I can see a good snapshot of where the projects are, and then down here I can see for the next 30 days where are my projects at, what late tasks are out there. So using Infowise, it's very visual. I didn't have to do any coding, it was all done straight from the browser. Okay, any questions about this charting stuff before we continue? Okay, right, I did talk about calendars before. So in addition to those chart web parts, we also have a nice Infowise calendar web part. And here we've got a calendar of our projects. So for each of those projects that I have, they all have a start date and an end date. So for example, Grapes project starts on the 3rd and goes all the way through pretty far to the 1st of August. And if I mouse over it, I can see that I've got a project manager of myself, and then I've got 2 stakeholders for that project. All of this stuff is configurable. So In this case, I'm looking at the projects calendar. Of course, I could also look at the tasks calendar. I can set up what I want to be visible on mouse over. And then if I click on this, it's actually going to take me straight to that grapes project, so I can see more information about the project there. Now, where this really is better than the SharePoint calendar is that additionally to the month view, I can also do a day view. So I can see what projects are working today. There's a lot of them. I can see a week view to see which projects I've got by week. If I set this up as well, I could use the tasks by time. Of course, I don't have time, I just have dates, so all I've got is this big glob on the top. And then finally, I've also got a nice Gantt chart view, so I can see really easily where each project is starting, where each project's ending, how the flow goes. This is a really great web part. Again, all I'm doing here is setting up a Infowise, hang on here, calendar web part, Event Calendar Plus, and then back in my dashboard, I'm going to go to the event calendar setting, and I'm going to set up that calendar to, this is where I'm going to be pointing it at the projects list and doing all sorts of things like that. Okay, so there is my calendar and there are my projects. And then, let's see, any questions that we can tackle? I've got a good question here from Donald. What is driving the data that's showing the status? So he's asking if there's any, if there's information being pushed into the chart. In this case, all I've got is a basic drop down, so I can set the status from pending to in work to complete to canceled. As soon as I make that change, it's going to be reflected on the dashboard. This is very simple. Of course, Infowise has some great import features. I could read the status information from some sort of outside database and read it into here, so that's always going to be up to date in SharePoint. That's a little bit more advanced than I want to cover in this webinar, but certainly you can use Infowise to pull information from all sorts of different sources. This is especially good because if you're using SharePoint Foundation, you don't get that ability to connect to databases out of the box. But with Infowise, you can actually add that ability to SharePoint Foundation and do a lot more with it. Okay, so continuing on, the last part we're going to talk about is automation. So we've got a nice dashboard set up. We've got those two lists. We've got projects, we've got tasks, but they're not really interconnected. From a task, I can actually pick what project I want it to be associated to, but it's kind of clunky. Like if I go to a project, I can't really see what tasks I've got where. So here we're going to bring in one of our really cool features, and that is the what we'll call the associated field. So from my project, what I want to do is I want to be able to see the tasks that are related to this project. So we're going to set that up here from the design screen again. So I'm going to go into my Infowise design screen, and we're going to start this with a associated items column. Now I've already actually got this set up in the background, but I want to show you what it looks like. So I'm going to set up a project tasks column, which is basically going to go look at the project tasks list and then report all of the tasks that share the same project. So what that looks like is basically looking at the project tasks lists. I'm going to pull in the form view, which is a view I've got set up. And then the key part here is this lookup. I'm looking up the project lookup from the task list. Again, just to show you, that is a lookup field that's looking up the project. Just a basic SharePoint lookup field. Very, very simple there. And then once I've got this set up, what I get, let's go back to my home page, is a nice project tasks column here. So from the Kiwi project, if I look at the project tasks, I can expand that and see immediately which projects are, or which tasks are related to that project. Now this is especially useful because this project's already behind schedule, and I can see I've got a few tasks that I need to hound Garrett about to make sure that they are done and we can close this project out. So this is, instead of having to open up that task list and filter it down and figure it out, it's all right there. Now additionally, if I wanted to, we didn't really talk about the forms part in this webinar, but one of the nice features of Infowise Ultimate Forms is that nice form. So what I'm talking about here is when I hit edit, it's what I see. This is the Infowise form. What I'm going to do is add the project tasks column to the Infowise form and save it. What that's going to do is update my view form and my edit form to show that new project tasks column. Just take a second to save here. since we are using Office 365, we're sort of at the mercy of Microsoft for making these changes as far as the speed. Let's refresh that. There we go. And now I can see right from that form, I can see what those project tasks are. I can actually add new tasks right from the form. Now, a nice piece of automation for this would be, let's see the count of tasks that are not complete. So on my dashboard, I'd like to see for each project, I want to see how many tasks are still remaining open. So that's going to be one of my associated items summary columns. This one basically looks at the associated item column and does some sort of summary operation. In this case, I'm going to be counting the number of open tasks that we have. So what that looks like is it's going to look at the project tasks. It's going to be doing a count of the percent complete not equals 100. So basically, which tasks are not 100% complete. If I go back into my tasks list, I can sort of modify my view and drop that new column in, which is count of, oh, what is it called? Count of open tasks. Am I in the wrong list? I must be, because I'm not seeing that. I must have clicked the wrong list there. Let's try that again. Modify view, and I should have count of open tasks. There we go. Drop that in there, and now I can see at a glance how many tasks are open for each of my projects, even without having to open anything up. So I can see that some of these are 100% complete. I have no open tasks, and some of them have multiple open tasks. So there's a great bit of automation there to make sure that all of your tasks are actually being correctly reported. I don't have to do a lot of work to sort of dig in and see the status of each of these projects. Okay, so let's see. Any questions about this automation stuff I've been covering right here? Not really. Okay, we've actually hit the end of our time. I do have a little bit more to show you, so if you're willing to stay along, please feel free to do so. And for a couple more minutes here, I'll show you one more nice piece of Infowise automation. However, if you do have to exit, I have a couple things to say. Number one, thank you all so much for joining me today. This has been a pleasure. I know this is difficult to take 30 minutes out of your busy days, but I hope that you got something out of this webinar. Next up, as I said, there of course is a quiz, not a quiz, but a, what do you call it? A survey at the end of the webinar. So please stick around and answer that survey after this closes so we can fine tune our webinars for the future. Additionally, like I said, you can get a free trial of our product. If you go to our homepage, infowisesolutions.com, you'll see that right here you can get a free trial, and you just fill out the on-premise or Office 365, depending on what you're using, and you can download our free trial. It's 30 days free, the whole product. You can start using it right away. Okay, so with that, for those of you who are still here, let's talk about a little bit more automation. So we've got this set up nicely now where if I open up a project, I can see which tasks are associated to that project. Pardon me. Wouldn't it be nice if we could set it up so that as soon as I make a new project, tasks are created automatically for me? Maybe there's a business requirement that says when I make a new project, I have to have at least an initiate project, a milestone one, and a finalized project task associated to that project. Now, default SharePoint out of the box, what I'd have to do is create a project, and then I'd have to have each of my users remember, okay, right, I've created a new project, I've got to go in there and make a new project for initiate project, and I've got to do the same thing 3 times to set up those 3 default tasks. But with Infowise, what we can do is actually automate that whole process. So as soon as I make a new project, it's going to make 3 new tasks for me and associate those to the project so that right away people can see, okay, we've got 3 things to do in this project. Everybody's following the business process. That's probably the key thing here, is that to make people follow our business processes. Pardon me. So in order to do that, we are going to go back to our Infowise dashboard, and we are going to set the actions this time. So actions are basically automated features that happen in the background in SharePoint. This is similar or analogous to the workflows, which you might be familiar with in SharePoint, but it's a lot easier to use. There's no crazy coding required. It's all done straight from the browser. Okay, you can see I've already got 3 actions set up. It's generate initiate project task, generate milestone 1 task, and generate finalize project tasks. quickly, I'll just show you what those actions look like so you can see what setting them up entails. It's pretty straightforward. Again, there's no code. It's entirely configuration based. Just click the checkboxes and you're good to go. In this case, we've got a task here. It's going to be running on new, which means every time I make a new project, I want this task to run. I could also set it up to run on edit, which is basically every time a task is edited, it's going to trigger this action. A couple other things I can do. I can do timer based, so I can make a task happen every night at midnight, for example. And as far as what the task does, it's going to be a generate associated tasks task, or action, I should say. And what I'm going to do is basically create a new associated task based on the project tasks. I'm going to assign it to the project manager. I'm going to set the name of the task to be initiate project, and then I'm going to set the start date and due date for that task based on my parent field. I've done the same thing for each of these other tasks. Of course, the generate milestone is going to be called generate milestone. It's going to be due a little bit later, and then the finalized project task will be due on my project end date. So now that these three actions are set up, all I have to do is go in there and make a new project. So for example, I am going to call this project, let's say Lemon Project. I'll set the due start date today, due date in a week. Project manager will be Will, set some stakeholders in there, and that's it. So now that the task is being created, it's going to pick up those new actions and trigger those actions as well. So in the background, wherever my Lemon project is, there it is. In the background right now, it's creating those new 3 tasks for me. So if I just give it a second to finish, there we go. If I open up this project, I'll see I've already got those 3 new tasks. They're assigned to Will. They've got realistic due dates. And it's all done automatically. I didn't have to hope that the user was going to remember to make the tasks. I had the system make the tasks for the user. And that's a great example of how you can use Infowise Actions to automate a lot of business processes that you might have in SharePoint that today you're either building complicated workflows for, or you're just hoping your users are going to do it. And of course, users are going to forget to do it sometimes. Okay, so that's a nice example of some Infowise automation. And with that, I'll bring this webinar to a close. So again, thank you so much for joining. We'll have another webinar next month. I hope that you go to our website and sign up for that next webinar. Additionally, we of course offer that free trial. You can also schedule a demo with us. I'd be happy to walk you through some additional features of Infowise, talk about some of your specific needs. Okay, and I guess that's...
Hey, Gary, I just want to make a quick note real quick. One thing I just want to let everybody know, as part of our product, we did just begin offering Kickstart training. It's included with any purchase in the product. This is a full 2-hour training session that is provided to you automatically regardless of which purchase you do. So that's a nice benefit for anybody new signing up using the product who wants some help learning how to use the tools.
Yeah, thanks, Will, for bringing that up. That is a really great training. It's sort of instructor-led. You can see what we do with Infowise and take that and do it on your own site. Of course, we have additional training as well if you wanted to do sort of self-led training, lab-based training. We have a lot of good resources on our website. If you click on the training link, you can see we've got a nice set of sort of self-paced training. Additionally, you can sign up for more advanced training if you want to as well. So that's basically it. Again, thank you so much for joining us. This will be on YouTube shortly. Hope you all have a great day.